We will resume the budget committee meetings that we recessed yesterday, and we are starting this morning with Sherry Hall, County Clerk's Department. So,
Are we coming up?
yeah,
10 minutes early.
We're ready to go here.
we're
so.
ready, yeah. We're cool. The nameplates in front of you on the back side facing us have other people's names on them. So I think, or do they have
These
you
are
guys?
just put our
Okay, you've already done them.
Oh, yeah.
Great, that's terrific. So on our schedule this morning, we have 50 minutes set aside to hear from the county clerk's office, right? And maybe more than that, because we're 10 minutes early. So I would just remind you that we're doing about 50% presentation and then leaving 50% of the time for discussion questions from the budget committee to any and all of you. So, thank you. And we do have copies of your PowerPoint. So thanks.
Good morning. It's nice to be here bright and early. I like the mornings. And we have, I'm Sherry Hall, County Clerk. This is Michael Newgard. He will be doing most of the talking about budget stuff. He does the budget. Andrew Jones is our election manager, and Carol Hopkins is our records manager. And
And we want to make sure too that all of your microphones are on and that your.
you could hear me with just talking. Okay.
Sometimes it takes a little
You
closer.
need to be fairly close.
Yeah.
Okay. And we push the red button? You want to do that? Sure. Okay. Okay, and so just to introduce our department, I'll go ahead and just read that. The mission of the county clerk is to provide elections, records management, property recording, property tax appeals, marriage and liquor licenses, and passport services to the general public, county departments, and other government jurisdictions so they can exercise their right to vote, trust in the integrity of the process, and promptly conduct their business in a welcoming environment. And Michael can do this page.
All right, I'll take this page. So you'll notice on our department budget request, the last few years, 2017, 2018 actuals were very good to us, revenue over expenses. And then we still gave back to the county in 2018-19. This year, for the fiscal 19-20, we'll be asking for a little bit from the general fund for the first time in a long while, and we can answer more of those questions in Q&A. And I'm sure you've gotten the chance to glance a little bit at our recording trend that shows our recording document pages where most of our revenue comes from. So we're still pretty self-sufficient though. I mean, that's just kind of a sliver compared to the millions we've been able to put back into the general fund over the years that we haven't used. Other than that, we have not, if you want to go to the next slide, we have still, even this year, reduced our budget by 1.41% over what we took or used last year. Some of those cuts that happened this year happened in material services. Personnel, we had some turnover in recording, 3 positions where two people retired. One moved over to the assessor's office, and we've hired new people who are starting in at the entry level and one senior position. So we're saving a little money there. And then part of the other spot was charges for service and record management. And we can go into details later in the Q&A if you'd like to ask questions about that. And then, did you want to start on? Or I can
Okay.
start on Bob?
We'll go in order. Bob, just first. Yeah.
So I administer the Board of Property Tax Appeals program. It's a great program for people to be able to appeal the property value if they feel it's in dispute or they don't agree with it. This year we heard 303 petitions or appeals from Clackamas County taxpayers. And of those appeals, we're required by statute to get those people a timely decision within a time frame that's set by statute. So the whole process went by book this year. We're required to get them a notification of their decision within 5 business days. In Clackamas County, we do it in 1 to 2. So we exceed what the statute asks for in that case, and we were 100% across the board in meeting everything we were supposed to do for our program.
Just touching on the performance measures that we're using for the elections office. These are new metrics for us because we're trying to get performance metrics that actually measure things we can control. And so the ones that we came up with were personnel costs per ballots cast. That way we can control the efficiency of how well we're dealing with the ballots that come in. We can't control how many show up, but we can control how we handle them when they do. And I need to apologize, the number up there, the label, it's personnel cost per 100 ballots cast, not per 1,000. We were going back and forth trying to find an appropriate number, and that must have just missed that one. So it's per 100 ballots cast, but the rest of those numbers up there are accurate. The other metric that we have is ballot correspondence sent to voters within 2 days. So that's in the case that a voter would return a ballot that they didn't sign their ballot, there was no signature, or the signature was unable to match. And so our goals up there are that within 2 days of receiving a ballot, that 100% of that correspondence is out to voters to give them a chance to respond.
Okay, and with recording, we have one measure up there which says that we supply certified copies of requested documents within the day. We actually do everything in recording according to statute, and all the recorded documents that come in 1 day get recorded before the day is over. One of the things that we hear some comments about is wishing we were open on Friday till 5. And if you remember, I think Mr. Bernard and maybe Martha Schrader were here when we went to the 4-day work week. And recording has to be open 5 days a week according to law. And so now there are comments. And I actually talked to Mr. Madcore about possibly on Fridays rotating staff so that we would have 2 working till 5 so that they could do all the steps, marriage licenses, electronic recording, and recording. And so that might be something that's coming. It won't add anything to our budget. We will do it within, the budget we have, but it would meet the customer's wants, I guess, better than what we do.
Good morning. For records management, we have a performance measure for records to be destroyed within 30 days of appearing on a destruct list. The destruct list goes out when the records have met their retention requirements. Right now, actually, I have received a positive response for those destructs. I send them out on fiscal and calendar year, and I sent out probably 25 this past 2 weeks, and I've actually had quite a return coming in. So that 80% is hopefully going to be more 85, 90%, which is great. Applicants receive their passports within the stipulated time frame. We have only had 1 or 2 returns this year, and that has been either the customer's photo has been taken at another facility and the U.S. Department of State has not accepted it, or they have had something in their background that has restricted them from receiving their passport.
Okay, so our key performance measures and results, what you get for your money. Most targets and goals for our programs in all departments are dictated by statute and administrative rule. And in most cases, we exceed those expectations for timeliness. The most significant change to our program has been the election motor voter law. It's increased voters' registration demands more resources to maintain service efficiency. Before motor voter, I'm thinking we had 230,000 registered voters, and now we have 290,000. So it's more materials going to them with their ballot packet and everything else. The upcoming fiscal year 1920 includes a budget for elections during a presidential primary, which means increased turnout and higher costs. And I don't know if you noticed, but the recent election we had, which was special districts, we had about 18% turnout. And some of the temps were thinking like, wow, it's just so slow. And I told them they need to remember this election when they're working next year in the presidential primary. In general, they're going to wish it was slower because it's going to be the biggest election, probably bigger than 16. want to do the emerging issues?
Sure. The first bullet point kind of touches on what Sherry already said. We've seen a steady increase since motor voter passed in 2015 of around 57,000 plus voters added to the rolls since then. And that, when you think of that in terms of every single envelope that goes into your ballot, that's a lot of resources. So that definitely is something that we'll see going down the road, continuing to impact what the costs of elections are. Also, we have, it's pending legislation in Salem, but the postage paid ballots where they'd like to have, a permit postage stamp in the corner. So instead of going to the drop box, if you just wanted to put it in your mailbox at your house and send it with the postage already paid, that legislation is probably likely to pass. The issue at hand is who's going to foot the bill for it at first. Andrew will have some more details about that in the Q&A, but it could be possible that we could end up paying the first part of that and then waiting for a reimbursement from the state. Redistricting in 2021 and 22 will definitely demand a lot of attention and resources, extra training for staff. I'll let Andrew answer more questions about that in the Q&A, but it will definitely, this is just something for us to look at down the road, not necessarily this year. And within 5 years, we'll possibly need to do some upgrades to some of our election software as well. And we estimate to have at least 300,000 registered voters before or at the 2020 presidential primary this time next year, which would be 10,000 more than we have right now. So, no, we kind of flew through the presentation, but we know you have questions.
Let's start with Commissioner Schrader and then Commissioner Bernard.
Yeah, what would be the nature of the upgrade that's necessary for your system? I mean, I obviously think it's a good idea, but
With our
what?
vote tally system?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not necessarily an upgrade, it's just planning for, at some point, the system that we have will be obsolete and will stop being supported. And so
Okay.
it's about an 8-year cycle that we plan on this. And so this isn't in this budget, it's just letting you know in the future couple years, we're aware of this and we know that we will probably need to buy a new vote tally system in a few years.
So how many years are you into this system?
So this current one we purchased in 2014.
Yes, 2014, Hart InterCivic.
Okay.
And they do upgrades regularly with different things that customers ask for. Yeah.
So I think it's okay to answer the questions as you're doing the presentation. So this question, why are our recording fees reduced?
Trending down.
So, great question. I provided a couple bullet points on the slide. A few things. Interest rates are up. Housing prices are up. That generally will slow things down with the housing market because the bulk of recording documents come from home sales and property transactions. We also surveyed a lot of the counties across Oregon and found that we are not alone in seeing some of the same exact trends of 10 to 15% less recorded documents, and for many of the same reasons. Where we are very fortunate is that, we're one of the largest counties in Oregon. And they definitely don't see the revenue we do. We're still turning out more revenue than most counties, but it's just one of those things to expect when the interest rates were raised 4 times last year by the Fed, and housing prices have continued to steadily go up.
Okay, so on redistricting, do you have to go into the voter data and change districts that people are?
So it's not the district lines necessarily, but we need to redraw our precinct lines after the redistricting. So the congressional lines are drawn, and then the state legislative districts are drawn. And then we get that data from the Secretary of State's office, and we redraw the precinct lines. Okay. And with this upcoming one, just to mention, we wanted to take a more expansive approach to redrawing some of these lines. For so long, they took the previous precinct lines and just tweaked them when they needed to. And it's got to a point where we have very complex precinct splits that adds lots of extra ballot styles and extra expenses for us. So what we'd like to do is take more of a zero-based approach, like with the budgeting, to kind of start over, start at the base level and build from there instead of just taking what was already out there and tweaking it to make it work. We want to come up with a system that makes sense.
And so on the ballots postage, what are they talking about in Salem? Are they going to fund this, or is it going to be an unfunded mandate, like you
They're
said?
talking about funding it, but first election with the system will probably pay for it and be reimbursed, but it could not come in at the same time, so we'll be out the money for.
So we can charge interest, though.
The bill's in Ways and Means, so it hasn't passed anything yet. Part of the legislation is that the state would pay for it, but the mechanics of how they would pay for it, they haven't determined yet, whether it would be a reimbursement model or whether we could use the state's permit and then the funds never come out of the county money. So.
There's some complication because we want all the ballots for Clackamas to come back to our office with the permit postage. If it's a state permit for business reply mail, it has to go back to the state, which could delay the ballot getting to us. But our state election director, Steve Trout, is working with Washington, D.C. post office and trying to figure out a way where it can be permit postage, but they'll be returned to each county. And business reply mail is not a good one because it takes an extra 3 days to deliver. And, you know, ballots, I mean, time is of the essence. So we have to figure out, they're trying to figure out the best way.
Yeah, I'm always amazed that I remember the first time I ran, I knew within 2 minutes that I had won after 8 o'clock, and that's amazing. And for people running, it's a blessing. So the investments we've made in the county to count and the work you do to prepare for the count is tremendous. So thank you for the work you do.
Well, in our software, Heart Verity, the first election we used it for, the system was counting the undervotes and overvotes. And 50% plus one is what it takes to win, right? I think it was Martha's race and maybe another one where you weren't showing at 50% because of the under and overs being counted as a ballot cast. But the Oregonian ran an article and they did the math and did it right. So you did come out as, the winner at the first return. So the software is extremely important. And you approved this system, which is, I feel, the best one on the market. So we want to stay there.
Thank you.
Thanks. Commissioner Savas and then Commissioner Humberston.
Yeah, I just want to just appreciate Andrew's earlier comments and read into that. There's not a lot of control in your situation in listening to the law library presentation yesterday. And, when we have these mandates, which are partly funded sometimes by the legislature, and all of a sudden they get the counties or local jurisdictions to do what they need to do, and then they pull that funding, and then we're voila. Either it begins as an unfunded mandate or it becomes an unfunded mandate, and so we're all stuck. And so I'd love it'd be kind of interesting just to see what that is amounted to in the last 10 or 20 years. Not your department, but all of us, all jurisdictions, how much of that has been pulled back from the legislature and spent on other things. But I did want to just bring to, thanks for everything you do. Guys, I know you're in a tight spot, and the market to some degree, as Michael was pointing out, reflects a little bit on your recording fees. And historically, you have been one of the few departments that's been able to give money back. And so therefore, on tab 16, page 16, if I could draw everyone's attention to the graph on the left. I did this last couple of days, and I certainly remember doing this last year.
What'd you say, page?
What's different about the box here is that the purple line, the language in the purple line says revenue to general fund. It'd be great if we saw a lot of that, but everyone else says general fund support. But because of the trend you've always been able to provide that money and not keep it in carryover. And that's another policy difference between your department and some other departments is that a lot of the other departments have just kept that money and banked it. And I think that was something that we talked about at great length last year. So I just want to acknowledge that, and also that your orange, your red and blue lines, the operating revenues versus expenditures, shows that you're a little bit underwater. And if anything, not that this is a surprise to these folks up here, but anything, when we talked about these graphs last year, and what was pointed out last year, I know that in Chair Bernard's later comments is we just ought to get rid of them. They weren't indicative, and I just want to point out that they actually are. And charts are based off of numbers. Anyone who's done graphing or charting realizes that those are done off of real numbers. Thanks for your presentation. I just want to point out as an example that that says a lot. Those numbers say a lot.
Right. Well, and Diane Padilla would always say that we're not a general fund department, but this year you can see that we are. So we always poured money into the general fund and never really
definitely
asked
took
for
it.
any.
Yeah, you guys run a lean shop, but you have a service that it's mandated. I mean, we got to do it, and your FTE reflects that you. So is your long-term? That's a question I forgot. Is your long-term forecast or intent to keep your FTE -3?
-3?
Well, I'm looking here. It says.
So I think you're looking at recording, Paul? Is that?
Yeah, that was recording. 3 people vacated the
We
position.
just filled those positions this month. They were vacant for about a month and a half.
What I was looking at, Michael, was the last on page 16, which is the department. You have 16, where it says the fourth column down says 16
Yes.
filled positions and 3 vacant. And they're looking at the graph as well. So you're back up.
Our 3 vacant positions were all in recording. We had 2 retirements and 1 transfer to the assessor's office, and they've all been filled this month.
Okay,
So we're back at 100%.
Okay, so your intent's to be at 19 total then?
Yes.
Right, thank you.
And that's what we've been at for the past several years. In fact, I'd like to highlight something with our election department. We've maintained the same FTEs even throughout this massive increase of registered voters. Our nearest peer, Washington County, and Andrew probably would be best to make this comment, but it's impressive.
So just to highlight how lean of a crew we run for elections, 290,000 voters in Clackamas County, we have 5 full-time staff. So that's 1 staff for every 57,000 voters. Washington County has 1 full-time staff for every 44,000 voters. If we staffed at their level, we would have 7.75 full-time equivalents instead of 5. And it's the same across the board with other peers. Marion, we have the same staff as Marion, even though we have 90,000 more voters than they do. Multnomah County, their ratio is, it looks like we would have 6.5 full-time equivalent if we staffed at the same ratio as them. So we run a lean crew, and we intend to keep it that way. It means our election costs might be a little higher for personnel costs because we bring in extra temporary workers to help with the elections. But even those numbers, I think, are comparable, that show that we run an efficient crew, and we get through things as quickly and efficiently as we can.
Thank you.
And on that note, I think they made a change this year or last year, did you already note this? That you went from like hiring employees and doing all the paperwork and going through HR with temporary employees to using a contracted temporary service, which I believe has made a very large positive impact.
Yeah, so that was a change that we did at the end of last fiscal year, where we took our election board workers out of the temporary pool of county employees, and we're now going through a payroll service so that they maintain their employee status with the payroll company, and then they're on call for us. They're still all our people. We're still the ones handling all the recruitment and training and selection, but it's streamlined the paperwork for county HR and for our department as well. So
We've got a lot of praise from HR for helping them out on that one.
and for our
They are
election board
loving it,
workers.
yeah.
And my last comment is, Michael, thank you for your service in the past, and thank you for your current service. You're active still somewhat, right, as a reserve?
Or you're welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for paying your taxes. You know, costs a lot to do what we do.
Thank you. That is interesting discussion and leads me to a question. Do we have the ability, or is it not permitted or whatever, to use volunteers for election time, like to help stuff the envelopes or to, you know,
Well,
do
done.
whatever? And I
Don't
know a
use
lot
the
of
word
that's
stuff.
automated.
Don't use the word stuff with ballots. We call it insert. Insert.
Insert, thank you, insert.
forbidden
Insert
word
this,
around our
this, and
office.
this. I realize a lot of that is
We have a
automated,
mail
but-
service that we ship the address library over to them electronically, and then they inkjet the addresses on the envelopes as the envelopes are inserted there. We could not do that ourselves. We have too many voters. And so as far as volunteers, the temps all volunteer to work and get paid for it. We don't have anybody that doesn't get paid. But they basically are volunteering to take time out of their retirement or whatever to work for us.
But they're getting paid.
Yes,
They're not
they are.
volunteers.
No.
Yeah.
And they, you know, the minimum wage is going up to 15. I'm not sure when that's final, but with Multnomah County, when they decided to do the minimum wage increase, they put everybody at $15 an hour up front. We're still at 12 something, I think. Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you. Commissioner Humberston and then Mr. Feely.
I realize with the change in technology and the increase in votes and everything else, you now have, this year you've needed some general fund support. With the census coming up and all of the work that's going to go with that, have you done any preliminary figuring on a subsequent budget in terms of what you're going to need in general fund support, or do you have other funding alternatives?
For the redistricting issue, the only thing that we wanted to mention is we'd probably need a little staff training, but we wouldn't need extra staff for that. It's just within the next year or year and a half, we need to make sure that our staff is ready for that transition.
Which will mean we have two that will be going to a training in California, completely to do with redistricting. They'll be trained there. So that's 2, travel, per diem, hotel. But it should just be fine in the budget we have. We won't ask for additional money.
Okay, thank you.
Couldn't they walk or ride their bikes?
To San Diego.
All downhill.
Yeah, exactly.
Trust me,
It's
no,
south,
it's
it
not.
must be downhill, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Feely.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a question about voter turnout, especially in this special district elections. Do you have any ideas on how to increase awareness or improve voter turnout?
I probably had more people tell me when I've asked if they voted, you know, I looked at the ballot, I didn't see anybody I knew, I threw it in the garbage. It's like, that's your taxpayer dollars at work. Read the voter's pamphlet or call our office and we can give you contact information. I don't know of a way
They're
to
just,
do
I
more of
mean,
that.
We do a lot of
I
work.
vote all the time, but I grew up in a political system, so, but friends, neighbors, they don't even know what's happening, basically.
Some of the things that we've been doing a lot of work with PGA, and they do outstanding work, by the way, for putting out notices on. I don't know if you're familiar with the app Nextdoor.
Yes.
They've been putting out information on that. We did a Facebook Live video last year for the new ballot boxes, and Andrew actually has a great story about those from Wilsonville last week.
Yeah, so last year we asked for more money so we could replace all the ballot boxes across the county. And we were able to do that. We came in under budget for that project, and we had them in place for the general election last year, which was a great thing for our county and for our voters. And then just an example of how useful they were is on Election Day last week, we had a voter, while returning their ballots, run into one of the boxes in Wilsonville.
In his brand new Toyota pickup.
In a brand new car. And in the past, if we had not upgraded those boxes, that box would have been damaged, all those ballots would have been compromised, and it could have compromised the entire election. After inspecting that box, the only damage to the box was some paint touch-up. None of the ballots inside were compromised at all. The box was still locked and secure. The pickup, when I spoke to the driver, said they estimated $6,000 worth of damage to the vehicle. So the boxes were well worth the investment, and they should be there for a couple decades to go.
We got to motorize boxes to drive in.
And
Less
the,
damage to the box.
It had the snorkel for the drop-in, but
and the great point about that story is we were actually talking to PGA yesterday during our service level agreement talks about possibly doing a story about that's a benefit of these new, tough, secure boxes that we replace throughout the county that there's more of than our near peer counties. So that's a great service for them that we can highlight and tells people to put stuff in it and vote.
And I just have one comment. My wife and I recently got our passports at the clerk's office, and the gentleman there that does that was very helpful. As a former bureaucrat, our paperwork was in perfect order, but I was especially impressed with the way he dealt with the couple who came in with, not having the right stuff. But he was very gentle with them, very helpful, spent quite a bit of time with them. So I was impressed with that.
and that's Carol's department.
Oh, good.
That was Bippen, and he's amazing.
Yeah, he was really good. Thank you.
Commissioner Fisher?
Yeah, well, we're talking about all the good things that the clerk is doing. I recently moved, and I was so surprised how quickly I was able to get my ballot after I corrected my address with the DMV, and I could just check a box. And I was really expecting, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to go in for the special election, get my ballot, go in person. But nope, did my correction and my ballot came, I think it was like within a week because I waited, I didn't time it well. And I just think that is phenomenal that address change could be processed so quickly with just basically a check of the box and correcting my address with the DMV, and that I got a ballot and was able to vote in the special election. So
Thank you for voting.
If I could just touch on the mechanics of that a little bit, because we talk about the motor voter law a lot and how it has increased our voter rolls. One of the streamlines that they added in that bill was that we get these automatic updates from DMV on change of address. And I looked at some of the numbers just to see how often we're getting updates like this. If you go back before motor voter, we averaged about 10% of our voters got a correspondence from us as far as an address change or a registration update. That's over 25% now, so it's more than twice as many updates that we're getting. We're getting them automatically and electronically, which means that we can be nimble. We can get these updates and then within a couple days get ballots printed and replacement ballots or reissued ballots out to voters as soon as possible. So.
And that's another thing Clackamas County has done for a while, and there are other counties who say, I don't have time for that. So they get these updates, but they don't get a ballot to them within the time for the current election. It doesn't go out until later, so that's less voters that are voting. We try to get them out. I think we can do it through Thursday before the election, and we pretty much do all of them.
Yeah, we process all of our undeliverable ballots and all of our updates. And yeah, the difference that the clerk was highlighting is we're one of the few counties that undeliverable ballots that come back, if they have an address change, we update that change and reissue a ballot. So we're getting out thousands of more ballots to voters without them having to say, hey, I moved and I forgot to update my address. We sent that ballot out, we got an update back, we sent them a new ballot. There's about a week and a half delay from that original ballot, but the voter's not having to do anything. And so we think that's important for our office to be able to keep responding to that and keep getting those ballots out to voters.
So toward that comment, and just for anybody that might be listening at large, where I think this might help people out in the community, I actually have two questions, questions, whatever. So one is that years ago, and I mean like 12 or 14 years ago, a family member of mine was staying with me for a while and thought they were going to make their permanent home here. And so they registered to vote and, all that. They've been gone for years and years. And I keep sending the ballots back saying, not at this address. But even in the special election that was just held, a ballot came for this person. So I personally, and probably others in the audience, would like to know how you get somebody off the rolls. And then I have another question or a comment, thank you.
So like what you're doing is a good thing to do. One of the issues that we run into a lot, because of the automatic systems that are updated with the addresses, is we can get a note that says not at this address, we'll inactivate the voter, and then we'll get another address that puts them back at that address. And so we're always going to err on the side of sending them a ballot. Because just because we send somebody a ballot doesn't mean that they're going to vote it or that we can count that ballot. But we're going to err on getting them a ballot, and then when it gets back to us during the signature verification process, that's when we make sure that they're eligible to vote that ballot. And so when it comes to people moving, yes, just let us know on your ballot. If it's somebody that doesn't live there, strike through, not at this address, send it back to us. We can try to get it
I've been
updated
doing
that
that
way.
for a number of years.
And we have a lot of these where we inactivate a voter, we get an update to the exact
Yeah.
same thing, we send them a ballot. They get inactivated, we send them.
Yeah.
There's
In
some
fact,
scenarios like this where you could identify maybe this is possible waste, but there's so much added benefit that we get from these systems.
I can see the other side of it too. Yeah, it's just one year I almost voted on that person's ballot instead of my own because I didn't realize that, you know.
We
name
would have figured
difference.
that
I'm
out.
like, that, I'm like,
Well
oh,
done.
wait, no, that's wrong one.
Here.
You know, yeah.
Oh,
So,
well.
That
so
happens
the other,
often with a husband and wife. They vote their ballots and put them in the wrong envelopes
Oh,
and
yeah.
sign, like the wife signs the husband's. But we set those aside, and if we get
Then
them both
validate
in,
them.
then
yeah.
we can.
Well, the other thing that I know happens and is very much appreciated, you know, as our population gets older and older, and many of the folks are either living by themselves or with help or living in, you know, communal living like a residential care or assisted care or whatever. That and as you get older, your handwriting changes. And sometimes gets to where you couldn't even sign a check and have the bank think that, yeah, that's a valid kind of thing. So I know that Ms. Hall and maybe with others in the department too have gone to like the residential care places and, you know, and I don't know if you helped people, not help people sign per se, but if you witnessed a signature, you know, and that type of thing. I know that happened with a dear friend of mine, and it was very much appreciated because he'd never missed voting in like 60 years.
Talking
you
about
know,
Bill?
so, yeah.
Yeah, I remember going out to see him. When people go to help a voter with something, we never help them sign or any
Oh,
of
no,
that.
of course not.
But it has to be two separate parties that go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a great service, and also having a way at residential care and assisted care and that kind of thing where people can, you know, get their ballots together and be picked up at one place or whatever. So,
Right.
thank you for that.
What is
Commissioner
the
Savas, you
straight
had
line or
questions,
the
sir?
check mark? What's that called? If they can't
Okay,
sign,
all
they
right.
use this.
On time.
Okay. At the moment, we have plenty of that.
And they have that
Yeah,
on
we're
file.
good time-wise, but no, I see no other questions. Any other comments or anything?
Well, we're kind of complimenting our systems and, you know, the things we do, but it's because you guys approve what we need to do the best job we can that we have it. So thank you.
Good. Well, thank you. Thanks for the work you all do, and we'll keep voting.
Voting.
Yes, yes.
I think
And
that's
getting
important to a few people
passports
here this
and
year, right?
Fun things like that, right? So, thank you.
Thank you.
So a process question, next on the agenda would be Health, Housing, and Human Services, H3S, as we so lovingly call them. And Mr. Swift and some of the others are in the audience. We're a bit early. Are you prepared to start early, or would you prefer that we take a 10-minute break and then start with you, sir?
I'm prepared, but I still have a few folks coming.
Okay.
So maybe if we could.
We can
10
take,
minutes,
we
that'd
can
be
take a
great.
few minutes after, let me see what Commissioner Savas has to
I
say.
just
sir.
want to just ask a question. On Tuesday, we had requested a little bit of information. I just didn't know what's going to come. Part of it was related to the forecasting, and some of it was related to things specifically to the sheriff's presentation. So I don't think I had anything for H3S from a request standpoint, but just want to know if we'll be seeing what we all have.
Sure. So anything that's been asked for up to this point, we're busy collecting or producing for you, and it'll come out to you in a packet probably tomorrow morning, much like we've done after other budget committee meetings. Anything that you wanted
Won't be
from-
here tomorrow.
Not
but
tomorrow morning.
Monday.
Like Tuesday
Well,
morning.
via email. It'll come to
Oh,
you in
email.
email, and then
Thank
we'll
you
have
so
the
much.
handouts. We'll have some printed copies for next week as well. So we wanted to get it to you as, you know, as quickly as possible, so it'll come in email. Anything that you've asked that would be produced by a particular department, we've given them a heads up. And so hopefully, those departments, like the sheriff's office, are prepared to answer those questions you've posed earlier in the week. If not, feel free to ask them, because we've given them a heads up that they will be asked for that information.
Okay, so nothing today then? Other than it was department specific? That's all.
So we do have some handouts, Ms. Fish, is that?
I do have one handout that I think would be relevant to give out sooner than later.
Okay, thank you.
All right, break.
Taking a break, aren't we?
Yeah, let's reconvene at 20 minutes after 9. Thank you very much. We're in recess.